Chuck Rainey is a bassist and session musician that's been on the scene since the 1960s. He played with Aretha Franklin, with Quincy Jones, with Steely Dan. He's on thousands and thousands of recordings. I know him through his work with Steely Dan and through the people that worked with Chuck that I've had on my channel, like Bernard Purdy, for example, who talked about recording those records with Chuck playing bass. I reached out to Chuck through my friend Greg Bissonette, who connected us. I didn't know of any interviews of Chuck. He came here, he's 83 years old, and he's hilarious. This is one of my favorite interviews I've done. I think you'll really enjoy it. I just want to say, if you're new to the channel or a first-time viewer, hit the subscribe button now. Here's my interview. Chuck, thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You have played bass on so many of my favorite records. I know a little bit about your background, but you played other instruments. You studied other instruments before you played the bass. Can you talk about that?
Well, as a youngster, I think my first instrument was the viola.
Okay.
Didn't care for it. In my neighborhood, they didn't, but my first instrument was a viola. I guess I was in the 4th grade.
Okay.
Or 5th grade. And then I played trumpet once they found out that I was not interested in the viola.
Okay.
I think I lost 2 of them. But they found them, but I didn't take good care of them. I played trumpet for a long, long time, all through middle school, all through the rest of middle schools, and in junior high, high school, and my first year in college. I played trumpet.
All right.
And then I switched to baritone horn in college.
Okay.
Which is very interesting because it gave me a feel for not only the bass clef, but the baritone horn moves differently in the band, especially in the orchestra.
Yeah.
And as a trumpet player, I mainly played first trumpet or solo trumpet, where those parts are different. So going to baritone horn was the same thing because at the Lane College Brass Ensemble, I played baritone horn. And the baritone horn is accompanied with, we had 2 trumpets, 2 French horns, a tuba, but I got a chance to feel what the baritone horn did aside the tuba, because I sat right next to him.
Right.
And I always wanted to play the tuba anyway, but these little skinny lips, I was not going to make it. And then when I was in the Army, I learned how to play the guitar.
Okay.
And when I got home after college, I was playing the guitar because the baritone horn and trumpet is all orchestral music.
Yeah.
But the guitar was jazz, R&B, and I did know a little bit about it, so I started playing the guitar. I wasn't a good guitar player.
Okay.
And my hand got so big that I couldn't shape a chord.
Right, couldn't fit them in the frets, right?
And so the band I was in, the drummer said, "Why don't you get one of them new basses?" And the fingering, the spacing is so much bigger. Even on this, so much bigger rather than the guitar.
Yeah. So
now I play chords on the bass because I've got a big hand. But I have those instruments I did play. I did enjoy them all. Like when I was a baritone player, I was not thinking to be a bass player. When I was playing guitar, I was not thinking to be a bass player. It just happened.
So you started bass in your 20s?
I was 21.
Wait a minute.
But I played all the other instruments.
Yeah, but Chuck, that's amazing that you didn't even play the bass. You never touched the bass until then.
I was 21. Well, it is what it is. Sometimes I know musicians that are in their 40s that pick up the bass. And they play it well. The only thing they don't have is memory from playing all the older stuff.
Yeah.
They just pick up on what's going on now. Once you are a musician, you've had all the instruments that we're talking about. I sort of have a feel for what to do and what not to do. Not that I'm always right now, but I had to learn. The experience is the greatest teacher in the world.
Yes.
You learn what not to do.
Yeah.
You also learn when to do it. And you also learn if
you should do it.
You should do it.
So when you started doing sessions, how did you transition into doing that, into playing?
Well, I was in King Curtis's band.
Yep.
And everybody in his band, including him, came out of the recording industry.
Yeah.
Or went into it.
Yeah.
So if you're in his band, he always had excellent bands. I'm very proud to say that, be a part of one of his bands.
Yeah.
And when you stop, for whatever the reason is, people know who he was, and he was a master, very well known, and everybody that came out of his band generally did end up being session players.
Yeah.
Like the bass player that I replaced, Jimmy Lewis, ended up being a great session player. It's very, very interesting about how that goes. You know, it is not easy to word describe a lot of things. You sort of have to have been there or to see how things go. But I will say, when it comes to stuff like what we're talking about now, the recording studio, you have to be seen, you have to be heard. And so when I first got to New York, I went to every jam session that I knew about.
Okay.
And I was not ashamed to go up to a band that I was playing, especially when I didn't have a gig.
Yeah.
And I see what this bass player is doing, and I think I could do that better than him. You know, I mean, it is what it is. So I'll go up and I introduce myself to the band leader, and then him.
Right.
You know, because you got to have friends in this business. They say, you know, like, in case you need anything, I'm new, and this is where I'm staying, and the blah, blah, blah. Plus, he's not playing the right changes. On this particular
put
song.
that in, right? Uh-huh.
I said, but good band. You know, so like I played every chance I got. A lot of people think that because you're new and you're in town that you're going to have a hard way to go. It's not true. Because everybody wants to try it, the new guy or the new girl.
Okay.
And so they can say is, well, I'm the first person that he or she worked with when they came to town.
Right.
But everybody wants to try the new guy because behind closed doors you really are not privy to know about someone else's relationship where they may not be getting along, but they have to work together because of, you know, so there's always a chance for a new person. Everybody wants to try the new guy. I'm that way. I want to try somebody new. Although, when I say that, I like to stay with my memory of working with these particular people. I like to stay with that. That's why my name appears on so many records. And I'm not the only one. Because once you're successful here, all the other producers and arrangers, they gravitate to use the same people. So like I'm among maybe a handful of people who are on a lot of records because of just being present on one successful project. And you come along, and if you're smart, you will use these same people. Because there's a difference between playing live and playing in the studio.
Well, this is interesting, though, because Steely Dan, who you played on many records of, used different drummers, different guitar players, but they used you on bass on so many records, so many tracks. Why? They loved your playing.
Well, it could be that. I think I'm a good bass player. Don't get me wrong. I don't brag about it. I think I'm a good bass player. But the reason I was involved with that whole scene is because of Gary Katz.
Okay.
Gary and I worked a lot together in New York.
Okay.
So when they started recording in California, I was already there, and they moved to California.
Okay.
And so, in working so much with Gary, who do you call when you want to do some sessions and you're not from L.A.? You call your habit.
That's right.
And this habit was me.
Yeah.
And so, once you start working, now Walter and Donald were not easy people. Over the years, I've been trying to say this. I'm not trying to pick words to be kind or whatever, but they were different. Okay. Very strange.
Okay.
Like Ricky Lee Jones, or the Warner Brothers artists. Very strange. So with me, coming from my background, before I got to New York, when people are strange and they're paying you to do something, it's best that you get a grip and try and figure out where they're coming from.
Right.
You know, especially if you like the music. And for me, I like the music. Every time I went to work for Gary, and it was something different. It's just, and as you know, the dance stuff is all different.
Right.
And I like the music, so I like the music, and I want to do as much of it as I can, because the wife, the bank, the dog, and the baby need to be happy. And so I need to be working. So the whole thing, if I like what I'm doing, I'll do anything that I can to stay on this project. So being on a lot of those records, I was the first bass player that they used. Now, they overdubbed a lot of bass players, like they did drummers. Mm-hmm. Asia, there's 7 songs on Asia. There's 7 different drummers.
Let's take the song Asia, okay? Mm-hmm. So Steve Gadd ended up being the drummer on that, but I've interviewed a lot of the people that have played on these Steely Dan records. Now, there was a drummer that came in the day before. We don't have to mention who it is, but the next day, did you ever know if you were going to retrack a song? Would you just come in and there'd be the same chart there, and you'd be like, "Oh, I guess we're playing this again"?
I did so many tracks with them that normally I was the first bass player to play the demo if there was I take that back, because sometimes we did listen to demos.
Okay.
That they had made. I have overdubbed Asia so many times. Every time somebody passed me on the back about the bass line, I said, I played it so many times, it better be good, or it should be. On all their songs. I think the only album that I did with the Steely Dan where I didn't do a lot of overdubs was the Royal Scam.
Okay.
You
and Bernard are pretty much, that's the whole rhythm section there.
Yeah, well, coming from Gary, the New Yorkers.
Okay.
You get it done.
Yeah.
In L.A., you can take a week to do something that we could do in New York in one day. They had to, if I remember, they had to get out of, they were with ABC Dunhill, I think.
Yes.
And they owed them a record. The Royal Scam was the record,
oh
I
my
guess.
Gosh, wow.
And so they had to get out of it. Like a lot of Motown artists. You owe the company a record, so you got to get it done. And usually, if you're not with the label anymore, you just do it quickly because you don't really care. But they care. The Gary cast cares. So the Royal Scam we done quickly. And I remember it probably took maybe 4 days, maybe a week to track it. Which in New York, my ego says we could have done that in maybe not one day because the music is very
Okay,
different.
so talk about the charts for these things, like those songs on Royal Scam, Kid Charlemagne, for example. These charts must have been many pages, and you'd be reading.
They absolutely were.
Would you be sitting there? Because Bernard told me that he would always be looking at you. He's like, I just look at Chuck and for what to do. And Bernard would, he said that you were always in his line of sight. He'd be sitting there, and you'd be sitting over here. Talk about that.
Bernard is so special. And a lot of things about Bernard that people don't know is so special is his hi-hat. Everything else is cool, but the hi-hat, like when we play live, like with Aretha Franklin, it's funny. I always set to his left so I can hear the hi-hat or even see it.
Yeah.
Because there's certain little intricacies, certain things that he does with his hi-hat that no other drummer does. And if they do, you can't hear it the way you hear it with Bernard.
Yeah.
So, like, he's definitely, and he's a character, too. So, like, sometimes when he's playing, you like, if you want to smile, look at him.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But Bernard and Steve Gadd are two drummers that, if they're on the session, one thing you can be assured of, that it's going to be a good feel. It's going to be a good feel. Mm-hmm. Now, usually the artist and the producer, they give the feel to the band.
Yeah.
With Bernard, if Bernard's on the session, if he disagrees, and once we play it, if he disagrees about what you think it feels like, he'll change it. And over a period of time, we've all learned that if he changes it, he may not like it, but do it because he's always right. Always right. Even if you don't like what his changes is, he's always right. So Bernard is a very, very special to me in my career. So is Steve Gadd. In that once you do something one time and there's a problem and you solve it, that problem never comes up again.
Right.
Because number one, we're professional. We understand what has to be done.
Yep.
So sometimes we can disagree. And whoever the strongest is, we go his way, But with Bernard and Steve Gadd, they're the kind of musicians that when they overdub something, and I think I'm that way too, when I sit down, if I played it before and I look at the chord chart, I'm definitely going to do the same thing, at least as far as getting better. I've never gotten better. I mean, to me, maybe to the producer or to somebody that said, well, that's better, but to me it's always the same thing because I only have
how many takes?
1 or 2 habits that I do.
Okay, all right.
And I don't do anything other than that. I learned a long, long time ago, if you don't feel it, don't play it. Or if you feel it and you have a problem playing it, forget it. Because the people behind the glass, they want to finish this song.
Right.
And I want to be called back. So there are certain basics that you don't do like overplay.
Yeah.
Now, I had to learn that the hard way because at the very beginning I did being a guitar player, I did overplay, and not a lot, but quite a few times say, no, well, no, don't do that, or that's too much, or whatever the case may be. A lot of players have a habit to let their ego speak for them. They wear their ego in front of them. So when you meet them, you're not meeting them. You're meeting their ego, who wants to do something that maybe shouldn't be done.
Right.
So it's a very interesting, especially with Steely Dan and with Quincy Jones, very interesting on how political skills, social skills play a large part in why you're there. Because once you're there one time, you want to be invited back. I tell, when I was teaching, a lot of students, you got to have friends. People have to like you. Also, people have to, in a way, if you're involved with them, you're involved because they can make money off you.
Right.
You're work for hire.
Right.
You know, that's all. It's just simple.
Yeah.
Now, when I say work for hire, there are a lot of people who would rather get more involved, more notification. Like I've created basslines that Donald Fagen gets credit for, and he don't even read music. I don't care because everybody knows that it's me.
Right.
If they don't see my name, at least they know my playing. To me, I'm just satisfied to play and make sure that my wife and my babies, the dog, and the bank are happy.
Right.
Because if they're not, you know, there could be a big mind fart going on in your life if you're not making money.
Right.
And also, too, if you're not making money on stuff that you want to do. Now, of course, I've had to do things that I didn't want to do, but I work for hire, you know, and I like to play the bass. As long as I'm the bass player, I'm happy, even if I don't get paid. I've played a lot of gigs where the check bounced, so I didn't get paid. But I kept pressing on with a smile because everybody on the session knew that I was there, and they either liked me or they didn't like me. But it's word of mouth. When you want to hire a bass player, what do? Do you have a file that says bass players?
Yeah.
Probably not. You do?
Yeah, in my brain I have a
In your
file.
brain. Well, they don't go to a file cabinet when they're looking for a bass player. They ask a drummer, or who should we get?
Yeah.
You know, so making friends is very, very important. There are a lot of people that you like to play with, but they're not friendly. You don't care for them. We don't care for each other. But then the professional side of what we do is, although two people do not get along, they don't fit. When it comes to 1, 2, they fit. So someone like Gary Katz has to make a decision. I control what they can't control, but I want them on the session because I've got to go back to the company with a project that works, and they work well together. So I hire them, and when there's a problem, I step in. You know, it's quite like when you have the ability to do that, that's what makes you a good producer. Because you have a lot of musicians that are very good, but they don't get along. And they will argue, or they will, especially percussion players. I've learned the hard way, do not have two different percussion players on the same day. Especially if they're from two different countries. Okay. Because they're going to have a problem. Well, you should do this. And they say, well, you should do this. Well, I want to do this. You know, that kind of thing. But there's a smart way to handle everything. You can get rid of the problem by excusing one person or just letting it go, and be very careful knowing the difference between dissatisfied, angry, and mad. Because when you get mad at a situation or you get mad at a person, everything goes out the window. It's okay to be angry because we have room to get back to normal. But if you're mad, it ain't gonna never happen.
So Chuck, when you talk about overdubs, okay, when you are doing a track in the studio, you walk in, let's say it's one of these Steely Dan tracks. You walk in, there's a stand with a chart, right? You're seeing it for the first time. Somebody's the band leader or something that's written out the chart.
Somebody in the band, yeah.
Somebody in the band's written out the chart. What's the first thing you do when you sit down? What do? You look at it, you say, okay, so what's this?
Well,
how do you decide what you're going to play?
I don't think that I make the decision. No, I don't want to seem ethereal here.
Yep.
But I don't make those decisions. Number one, I only have 3 or 4 habits. When I see a G chord, there's something I'm going to do to it no matter what the tempo is, no matter what the style is. When I see an E, A, D, and G chord, open strings, I have habits. You know, I have habits how I do. I very seldom play here on the bass unless I take a solo or another soloist. Always play right around in here, so that I don't have. If you're my conductor,
Yep.
I can look at you. You know that you have my attention,
Yep.
and I can see the fingerboard.
Yeah.
And I can see what's going on here. So I have habits. So when I look at that chord chart and hear the intent of the groove, I just play. I don't make a decision on what to play. For some reason, if I'm overdubbing, it's usually over a track that's been finished.
Yeah.
The guitar player, the piano player, and even the drummer gives my hand a suggestion to do this when you get here. When I didn't mean to do this, but I did it because I'm listening.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And then you have producers that would say, because they can see I want to do this. Also making sure that whatever this that I play sounds like the guy next door can play it. Maybe. Now when it comes to, I never played with Chick Corea, but with Chick Corea and some of the Quincy stuff, the guy next door ain't going to be able to play it right away. But the whole thing is, like the Archies, that was a session, that was a project that is clear. We want the music to sound like Archie can play the bass, and like Veronica, you know, they just,
Yeah.
so the guy next door can play. This
Yeah.
is bubblegum stuff. Very important. They didn't like it, but they paid. And I was on staff at CBS in a way at the time. And so, like, I just like to fit in when I can. And when overdubbing is so easy because everything's done. And even if you notate what you want the bass player to play, it's really relatively very done. You don't have to rehearse, maybe to get the part right.
But how much reading is involved in these things? Is it just chord charts reading with kicks, or are there parts?
Half my career have been chord charts or note charts.
Okay. When there's no chart, what do you do?
Well,
Is there a demo or something?
When there's no chart, whoever the artist is, if they play an instrument, they sing it and they play it.
Yep.
So you get a feel for what it is.
Yep.
And then usually the drummer will take over with some kind of beat or something like that.
Yep.
It sounds like it's complicated, but it's not. Studio musicians are studio musicians because they've listened to all kinds of music. They can emulate any kind of thing. So when a lot of people come and do a session, they don't know second from premiere about what to do or how to do it or how to write. So they hire a studio musician. So this sounds like a Total song, or this sounds like a whatever kind of song. Not that they play the same thing, but you get ideas from experience. I've been in so many studios. I wish I had $1 for every studio that I've been in. I would be rich. But you know, you got to spend time. You got to be there a lot, because a lot of things that work on Monday are not going to work on Wednesday. So you have to figure that out, or somebody tells you, and you have to agree. The idea is to make this person feel that they've done something.
You know, I interviewed Steve Lukather a couple weeks ago, and he said, speaking of Toto, he said you had to have an arranger's ear. The producers just expected you to come up with the parts on your own, and it would be great, it'd be played well, but you just have a basic chart, and you were the one that needed to come up with the parts.
Well, Steve was very, very good at it. There were a lot of LA musicians who were New York musicians too, they're very, very good at it. With Quincy, I was in that camp for about 3 years, and I don't know why. He never had to write a bass part. Also, too, if he did write a bass part, it was an ensemble lick that went with someone else playing.
Okay.
You know, also, too, I was always on time. A lot of musicians don't understand that 11 o'clock.
You mean you got to the studio on time? You said.
Yep. Bernard was always on time. Always wore a suit. I was always on time, so you can count on him being there. You can count on me being there too, although I wasn't always a suit guy. But the whole thing about it all is you have to get into the mind of the people that are hiring you, including the contractor, because a lot of times the arranger and the producer use a contractor.
Okay.
It's their job to find out who's going to work in this situation and who's not going to work. So it pays for everybody to understand that mindset, behavior, and responsibility is very, very unique when it comes to understanding what goes on that is not word describable. It's hard to describe with words when things happen and when they don't. You got to kind of be there. they understand that what happened in January is the same thing, but it's going to be different in March. But so it's a momentary thing of what to do. You don't feel it. When to do something, when not to. A lot of people raise their hand too much. A lot of people talk too much. And so the engineer, the producer, and the arranger are going,
Not this guy again, right?
Well, put your hand down. You're asking a question. A lot of people want everybody to know that they're there, so they over talk.
Yeah.
Or they say things that are not conducive to what has to be done. A lot of people do it. Good musicians too, but when you say, "I do not want to be around this guy again," or it doesn't matter to me, because I don't hire or fire anybody unless I'm in charge. So if I'm just there, I'm looking at this guy, and I can say to my shadow, "He won't be here tomorrow." That kind of a thing.
This is the rhythm track to Kid Charlemagne. This is you and Bernard and whoever played guitar on it. I know Larry played the rhythm guitar. Now, first of all, that's an amazing bass part, an amazing drum part, but the drum part is really, really strange in a way. It's unorthodox. It's so grooving, but it's really hard to play those mid-tempo songs like Bernard does, and so grooving. Mm-hmm. And you guys are just so together, and you even remember where that slide is, right? Now, something like this, was this just one take? What do you think? I mean, back then.
One take. Kiss Charlemagne, most of the tracks on Kiss Charlemagne was one take. When it comes to Bernard, Kiss Charlemagne, for some reason, you've done the research, maybe you can correct me, but I remember playing with Jeff Porcaro on Kiss Charlemagne. And Bernard was an overdub. Now, I did a lot of work with Jeff Porcaro, but at the time, Jeff Porcaro was in Toto.
Okay.
And he was probably the only band member of Steely Dan that got along with Walter and Donald. Because during my tenure with Steely Dan, Jeff Porcaro was always the drummer on the demo, if there was a demo.
Okay.
And he was the drummer that I played with first on all these projects.
So this is from 76, I think this was. Okay, so this would have been just pre-Toto by a couple of years. Well, they might have started Toto, but this would have predated Toto by a year or two. Mm. So, but I know this is you and Bernard playing. I talked with Bernard about this.
If I were a drummer, I'd play just like him. And if he were a bass player, he'd play just like me. Because we play the same nuances, the same little tricky-dicky stuff, that I call. We have the same, we're from the same planet, put it that way. Me and James Gatson are the same way. And then me and Gatson have the same birthday. And me and Bernard's birthdays he's on the 11th, I'm on the 17th. So only 6 days apart. So
with this track here, right, so you're playing. Now, you probably have never heard just the bass and the drums together like this, right? Right. Because when I played this for Bernard, I just played him just the drum track, and he had never heard it before. And he told me, he goes, we wouldn't go back and do playbacks. We wouldn't listen. We'd do the track. If they said it was okay, we'd move on to something else. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah. Especially Walter and Donald, believe me, I tell you. They will overdo something. Now, of course, coming from my perspective, this is it. This works. But to the trio that we're producing, and we'll do it over and over and over and over and over. I think they were trying to sample me. Which if they had told me that, I would have played differently. Because my strokes are not all even.
Right.
And then plus I kick back like that.
Okay.
So the sound is not, but once you put it with music, it works. So if they had told me, I would have played everything like that, rather than kicking back with my nail.
Interesting.
But they didn't tell me. And plus, I enjoy going back and forth, doing so many overdubs, it's great to be in Hollywood and say, hey, Rainey, how you doing? What you up to? I said, I'm working with Gary Cassidy's Lynn. Or I'm working with Quincy Jones. Oh, it makes you feel good when...
Okay, what's the difference between working with Quincy Jones and Gary Katz, for example?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, Quincy was more jazz, where the Katz was more pop. but they both have the same producing technique.
Okay, which is?
Quincy is an orchestrator. He doesn't play the bass. He doesn't play the guitar. He doesn't play piano. He was the trumpet player.
Okay.
So he doesn't write for the bass. He doesn't write for the guitar or the piano. He doesn't play those instruments. And he has been noted saying that you want a good rhythm section, you hire guys that play well. So his contractor basically would hire musicians that well, at the very beginning, I went to L.A. I moved to L.A. to be with Quincy. So when it came to me being in his band, there was no problem. I was going to be there anyway because I moved from New York to L.A. But Quincy is so is Gary. They're both soft-spoken, and they hire people that do a particular job from experience. And so we were very good for Quincy. And the time that I was working with Quincy, at the time he had the best bass player I think that he could have had, because I had been involved in so much music. With Gary Katz, I wouldn't say political, but socially, but when you work with somebody over and over and over and over, you become a habit, especially if you're successful over
and that's
and
good.
over. Yeah.
That's good. It keeps you working all the time.
Yeah, it does. And it keeps the producer in.
Okay, so put me in the studio, though, on some of these records. If you're working with Quincy on a session, how many people would be in on a typical session? Is he in the control room looking out at you? Does he walk out and talk to you in between things? Or is it just people have charts, people are making their parts up, you play it down, it's either good or bad, or we need to change out this thing? What was it like?
Well, with Quincy, it's really easy to talk about because I value so much my tenure with Quincy. Quincy, to me, is the epitome of a leader, in that this is the rhythm section. Quincy's standing right here.
Okay.
And sometimes he will make up the chord chart right there. Say, let's do 8 bars of this, 8 bars of this, and then at the end of this 8 bars, give me and we just slash out the rhythm. You're saying, just make it up. Most verses sound the same. Most choruses sound a little different, and if there's interlude, they're different. Say, let's make this the intro, and let's do 6 bars of this for blah, blah, blah. And then he'll say something like, for about maybe 10 seconds. Just by doing that, the drummer, who was usually Harvey Mason, would know exactly. And he might say, Rainey, give me some wood, although he never did. But he would just give the groove. And everybody would follow the groove. Now, we know we've already written A minor. And he just, he said, let's go for it. He would put together a arrangement in 10 minutes. I want you 1, 2, 2, 4. We just start making up stuff. Now, every now and then, he will have an idea about what he will want. Do you remember Ava Golda's
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Me and Eric Gale were so pleased to get that call because we had already been fooling around with something together. And when we got that call, we played what we've been fooling around with. We felt good doing it. The producer was going crazy. Because Eric and I were good friends, and we did do a lot of playing together outside of the studio. So that's Quincy. He would hire, his contractor would hire people that could read, and if they had the read notation. But they hire people that are working all the time.
Okay.
Because if they're all the time, they're busy working with everybody, it means that they are doing something. Now, with Quincy, he would lead you. Like, boom, boom, boom. That's just, so within him, you get a feel for what it is without him writing out notes. He wrote for strings and for horns and stuff like that. Gary Katz, a little bit different, than he doesn't play an instrument. All he does is he knows, like most New Yorkers are so nosy, they know everybody. Also, too, with Gary, Quincy, from time to time, had to use different musicians because Hollywood is very, very busy. New York is very busy also, too. But Gary Katz always hired the same people. And he called them his guys. He says, I made it here with this guy, with this group, every project Warner Brothers gave him, I take my people with me. Which I think is very smart because the few little records that I've been in charge of for production or whatever case be, I use the same people all the time. I don't want to waste time and money trying to understand what he means or he takes time figuring out what I mean. So experience. That's why, again, like I said, our name's on so many records because producers are smart. So are arrangers too. Arrangers have a tendency to overwrite for a part, especially for the bass. And if you want to write out something for someone to play, you have to make sure that they can play it.
Right.
Because a lot of things, you know what it is, but you can't play it. You can read it, but you're not playing it.
Right.
And there's a difference between playing something and reading it. And you can tell with some musicians. So there's don't come dime a dozen, but that's the contractor's job. That's the producer's job. Define people like Bernard and Steve. Define us, which, if you're paying attention, we're easy to find. If you just sort of look and maybe ask some questions or look at liner notes or something.
Chuck, when you would do a take, though, on whether it's Steve Gadd or Bernard or Jeff Porcaro, would you guys realize that it was a great take immediately? Or what do you look for? Does the producer tell you, or you guys just know, oh, that was a great take?
We look for somebody to tell us. Because we don't have privy to know why, what, when, or where.
Okay.
Now, we always know when it's good or when it's bad. Okay. I can say that for anybody. We know if it's good or bad. But we also know that we're working for people that don't necessarily know what they're doing. It happens all the time.
Right.
The person that you're working for either has the money or he works upstairs.
Yeah.
They don't always have to know what
So
they're
there's plenty
doing.
of producers that you would work with that didn't know what they were doing. They wouldn't know a good take from a bad take.
Right. The same way with record company owners.
Right.
They're just in the business to make money.
Right.
The studio musician, now of course, musicians are musicians.
Right.
And you find that musicians have a tendency to read their own press or to read their own ideas. They have a tendency to want to be correct when they're not. Mm-hmm. It all goes down to where you're talking, one guy's talking about what he thinks. I've done that. I'll go back to my house thinking, wow, a hit record, and never hear it. Never hear it. What I don't know is that behind the scenes, I have not been privy to know what business it is to market this particular record.
Would you know songs? I mean, would you recognize songs? If you're playing on a date like this with Kid Charlemagne, would there be a demo vocal or anything that you've heard? Or would you just play the track and not even know what it sounds like and then hear it on the radio? It's like, I think I played on that.
We always hear what we played.
Okay.
Once you play it.
But if there's no vocals on it or anything.
And there's no vocals. That happened a lot with Walter and Donald.
Right. So you just like, I don't even know how this song goes. Or would they have a demo?
I think that once you play a track, you don't have to hear the vocal. You know what the song is. I don't listen. I don't make it a habit to listen to lyrics. Bernard does. He'll know that song just like the singer.
Yeah.
With me, I just listen for a feel.
I'm going to play you some other stuff here, Chuck. Oh, this is hilarious. I love this. This is amazing. This is so good. Chuck, this stuff is way more complicated, and you're making it sound so easy, but when you're talking about feel and parts and things like that, you're like, oh yeah, there's a couple things that I do, and I have a few tricks that I use. It's like, but in reality, this stuff is really, the feel and everything like that is pretty sophisticated. People that have great feel, so few people have great feel that can play on these things and make the pocket feel good. And to gather together these people that can make these tracks that you listen to for decades and decades that have been hits, that's a very special thing.
Well, it's very, very special to be gifted. Gift is not the right word. To be given the opportunity to play with an Eric Gale, Cornell Dupree, Bernard Purdy, Harvey Mason, James Gadsden, Greg Felling-Yanes, Richard T., Paul Griffin. I mean, these people, Donny Hathaway, these people were so elevated.
Yeah.
What they did and how they thought, that there are two people that I remember that were perfect all the time. That Richard T. and Donny Hathaway. No matter what they said, no matter what they did, you never questioned it. You always did what you had to do because they were always correct and excellent. You know, when it comes to, it's almost like people talk about Wayne Shorter. And from what I remember, when he came in to play the solo, he was like Steve Gadd. The first time he played, never heard the song. When he came, he listened to the song. When it came to the solo, he played his solo, which is very ethereal.
Yeah.
You know, and went home. He didn't even ask for money. And he did not want to do it again. Working with Aretha, she was the kind of person that once she sang the song, even if it was a demo.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. The song, because no song is perfect by someone else's standard of view. But to the person singing it, that's the way it is. That's the way it happens. If it happens in church that way, you don't have a chance to redo it. That's the way that it is. It's not out of tune. It's just some people who are not into that, like Leo Wexler. I never want to talk negative about him because he taught me a lot, but he didn't know second from come here about the feel of gospel music, let alone black music. Although like he was a producer for R&B artists, but a whole lot of times he didn't know exactly. He didn't know what he was talking about. But we never told him that or let him know that because he was the higher E.
Right.
And also, too, the company was very successful.
Right. So to them,
you make the guy feel good.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think, say, the bass, Chuck, give me something else. You know, give me something else. So I'm playing here. So he wants something else. I play the same thing here. And he says, "That's it, baby." Thompson Dissel has a whole lot about that. I said a whole lot about producers that don't know sick of them come here about what they're doing. You know, he'll use, they want a banjo, he's playing a guitar. He does something, it sounds like a banjo. But he ain't got no banjo. He probably charged for the banjo. But there are a lot of ways that we have to do things.
Oh my God.
Not to make waves. Like people make waves when they ask too many questions, when they start inputting too much.
But the guys would say these things just to justify them being there, being the producer, or whatever.
There you go.
Play different, and you play the same thing up the octave. Yes, exactly. That's it. So that's justified.
And so I do understand them doing that. Sometimes I hated to go to Motown, because Motown, the average Motown producer always had an entourage in the control room, and they're always doing things that don't make sense, or Motown producers or Motown. The music is playing. There's a click track in everybody's ear. But then you got this person standing in front of the band, breaking the sweat, doing this, directing, and we got it right here. So what you do is you just let him break a sweat. You got the click track here. If anything goes wrong, you can blame it on him. But the whole thing is there's a lot that we have to do. We have to dumb down to make sure that we don't make somebody uncomfortable.
Right. Because
the music has to get done. You know, the project has to get done. That's the only way you can continue to work. The music has to at least be finished under the best circumstances. A lot of times it ain't finished under the best circumstances, but then sometimes it is. I like to be involved, whether it's uncomfortable or comfortable. I just like to be involved in a finished project where the producer's satisfied. Because most of the producers I work for, they kind of know what they're doing. I mean, not most, a lot of them, they know what it is. They know they know the mix is very important. Quincy Jones, the greatest mixer in the world. The bass, everything is always in the right place.
Okay, so I want to ask you this. When you would hear things on the radio back then, on the radio all the time, would you say to yourself, "Oh, my bass sounds really good there," or man, bass doesn't quite sound like it should, or whatever? Do you think about things like that, or you don't even care?
After I've done it, I don't care. If I do, I'm going to get more gray hair than I got.
Would you recognize though you're playing instantly?
Oh yeah, I recognize my playing for sure.
Okay. You played on so many thousands.
Yeah. And then there are a lot of bass players that have had to emulate what I did. It's like I've had to try and emulate Jameson and other bass players, Stanley Clarke, I've tried to emulate, although I've learned the hard way. It's hard for me to be you. And when I try to, the producers always say, play what you want to play. They can tell I'm trying to play like Stanley or I'm trying to play like Jameson. You know, but Jameson is easy. You know, because I sort of am that kind of guy. James Jameson kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Again, as we began this, it's very difficult to word describe exactly what goes on. Because the amateur piano player, like I've got a cousin who's in his mid-70s.
Okay.
And he's learning, taking piano lessons. He wants to be a piano player, and he's in his mid-70s. Now, that's fine, because it can work out. Except that when I talk to him, and he says to me, Chuck, say you know a song in C, in one chord. He says, when someone wants to do it in A flat, how do you make that transition? How do you make that difference? Now, that's someone who does not understand music.
Right.
He doesn't understand music. But when you ask that question, you may as well get a job as an orchestra clerk, not a musician. Because all you do, I say, Bob, all you do is play the same thing you played in C. You just play it in A flat. You know, the same thing. And then he says, but what if it's a ballad and they want to play it as a groove? You know, like how do you figure out what to do? Now, when you ask me that question, I want to say, I'll see you later. I mean, how can you word describe if you're going to play something slower or faster? What do you do? You know, and it's like, you'll find out what to do. You need experience.
Right.
You know, my youngest grandchild is 2.5, and it's amazing what she figures out. Mm-hmm. She can't ask a question because she doesn't speak sentences yet.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what she figures out. The same way in anything that we do, you know, you figure it out. Because sometimes word description can be rhetorically confusing.
Right.
You know, rather than you figuring out yourself and know what it means and how it should be. A lot of musicians, I've got a friend of mine that I love him dearly, and he likes the bass, but he's made it clear to me. He'll come to me and say, Chuck, and it'll be on a blues song, an R&B song, and show me how this fingering is. Always making it clear. I don't want to know anything about theory. I don't want to know nothing about scales, because he knows how I am. It's just, how do you finger this line? You know, now he's serious. He don't want to learn. He don't want to know nothing except at his parties that he gives. He wants to know how to play dum da 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 dum dum dum, and he's playing songs that are already recorded. So he doesn't need me. He should sit down and figure out the bass line you're hearing is dum dum. Take the bass and find out where boom is. You know, that's your responsibility. If you were 2, you would do that. But now you're 40, and you say, I'll just ask somebody. You know, although part of playing music is thinking. You know, a lot of things are not perfect. You know, I played some songs played on some records that I didn't particularly care for. Didn't like the music, but it was a hit, or it was very successful. So I stopped having an opinion. And my mother would say, there's something wrong with you. He said, you do something that you do well, you do it easily, and you do a lot of it. I have to go to work every day from 9 to 5, and you're complaining about this, that. I wrote a song for Nancy Wilson. And actually, I wrote it for Aretha Franklin. And the person that said that he knew Aretha, and I could get it to Aretha, didn't hear from him for about 3 or 4 months. And when I did see him, he says I couldn't get to Aretha. Which after working for Aretha, I understand that she's hard to get to. But they gave the song to Nancy Wilson, and he wanted the publishing. With me, I knew nothing about publishing. I just wrote a song. I said, "You got it, Nancy Wilson. You got it." When it was printed, actually he gave it to me. I played it for my mother, complaining. She said, "You fool! There's something wrong with you. You have Nancy Wilson." Recording one of your songs, and because you think that she's not doing it well, you're complaining, and that's Nancy Wilson. I learned a lot from that. Little Richard's the same thing. My mother wrote a song that we gave to Little Richard, and It was a ballad. Ever think about what a puppy dog can do for you? It was a waltz. We thought that maybe, and Richard's producer was looking for something different. Gave him the song. They liked it. Richard liked it. Except 2 months later, it ended up being puppy dog song. I love Richard kind of style. And I complained. And my mother said, again, there's something wrong with you. You got a superstar, and he said, an icon singing one of your songs, and you're complaining because they didn't do it the way you wanted to do it, and you weren't the producer. See, all these people have a producer and a record company that agree with how they're doing a song. So a lot of things I've had to learn that a lot of people never learn, you know. But we're all who we are.
Right.
You know, we're all who we are.
Okay, when there are guitar parts like this, these aren't in the tracking session, right? Like on Asia here, on this song, the guitar solos, those are done later, right?
Yeah.
So there's basically just a track, and this would be you, Gad, and whoever else was on there, Michael and Marty, and whoever was
played
playing
Asia?
it. Gad played on Asia.
Gad.
Yeah. Okay, so
But now Gad was an overdub.
okay, when you say he was an overdub, so the tracks were already there. He was playing
Already
to a
done.
click
He just
track.
came in and overdubbed the drums.
Really? So he's just playing to a click. So you're not even there when that's happening.
When he overdubbed, the track is finished.
Okay.
All they do is take the drum track out of his ear.
Okay, so even back then, they would just have a click, and the guys would just play to a click track
Yeah.
with the other instruments in there.
And that's why it was easy to overdub, because you got that, you can't lose time. You have that click in your ear of what
Yeah.
the time is, of what you were playing.
I was going to play the part with Wayne.
Now, the rhythm section is reading these licks.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I think it's a perfect solo. And it's a perfect solo coming from Walter and Donald, because they always wanted to be more jazz than punk rock.
Right. Great dynamics. Chuck, did you ever make mistakes on these things?
Sure.
Like playing this? Would you ever?
Yeah. Matter of fact, one of my biggest, most popular mistakes is Sanford & Son.
Okay.
At the very end.
Uh-huh.
But don't, boo-dum, and I'll play a wrong note. At the very end of that track.
Right.
I play a wrong note, and I complain about it. Q, so, he said, Rainey, you're making me look like a genius. Because Fred Fox is a comedian. Uh-huh. That whole thing is supposed to be comedy. And so it made him feel like he wrote that wrong note. And I complained about it a whole lot. And then again, my mother said, you know, when someone like Quincy Jones says it's okay, it's okay. You don't have to know why. But me, I want to know why, because it's wrong. But from his point of view, it's perfect. But I played a lot of wrong notes.
But okay, in this track, though, how long would a chart like this be? This is a long song.
About 7 pages.
Okay. And would you have two music stands set up?
Two or three music stands. And a chair that had rollers on it.
Okay.
So you just roll on. That's very smart.
Okay, so I want to know what your rig was that you were playing back then. So you played a P bass, right? Through what? Would you have a DI and an amp, both?
More of a DI. In New York, I used a Ampeg B15 guitar amp.
Okay.
In LA, I did use an amp, but I had many different amps because I didn't have to carry it. It's called the cartridge company, and they would bring an amp, but more through a DI. The thing, well, I'm trying to figure was in New York, LA, probably in Hollywood, to where you do a particular track, and you're sitting next to the drums, or you're sitting next to the guitar who has a mic on the amplifier, And when you play, the bass will go into that mic, no matter how you
Doesn't matter.
no matter how you look at it.
Well, however you isolate it, doesn't matter. It goes into the mic.
Yeah, well, sometimes if you put the amp in another
In a
room,
closet, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
that's one thing. But I never like to have that amp there, unless I want to play along with the Steely Dan sessions. I want to play along. I want to hear what I'm doing. And if I have an amplifier, I can hear the bass right here, but I'm always very low.
Yeah.
Right here. And because sometimes in the ear, if you have the DI is sending it to your ear, and sometimes it's not what you want. And sometimes it's too loud or it's not too loud. I don't hear out of this ear.
Okay. Has that always been the case?
No.
Okay.
Started in New York. Don't start me to cussing.
Yeah.
To where I put the earphones on instead of like this,
Yep.
like this. So I can hear what's going on in the mix.
Right here in the room. Yeah, yeah.
But I can hear this. Because sometimes if you can't hear the bass, I'm not going to be the one to bug the engineer about more bass. Because if he gives me more bass, somebody else is getting more bass.
Right.
So I just like to be just sitting there incognito except for I'm playing the bass. As long as I can hear the bass and the drums, I'm set. I don't have to hear nothing else. Because it's a job. And when you add what your preferences are, you're adding more substance to what's going on. And a lot of people can be a pain in the butt. They want this, they want that. Can we have more of this, or can we do more of this? And the blah, blah. I've heard.
Okay, so would you have any pedals, or you plug straight in?
Straight in.
Straight in.
Pedals are pain in the
Okay,
butt.
so what did guys do for tuning back then? I always wondered this. I never asked people. What did you do for tuning? Would you have a strobe tuner? Would you just tune to the piano? Would you tune to a tuning
Well,
fork?
before the strobe tuner became popular,
Yep.
you tuned the A on the piano. Because if the piano's out of tune, you're out of tune, everybody's in the same tune.
Right.
You tune to the piano. Then they start coming out with the devices, and we would use them.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Musicians have egos. And there are a lot of musicians refuse to use a tuning device. They wanted to be, it's a couple of my best friends refuse. You tell them they're out of tune, give them a tuner, and they want their ear to be whatever it has to be.
Right.
Not understanding. You got absolute pitch, you got perfect pitch, and you got relative.
Yeah.
I'm a relative guy. I have to relate a pitch to what I'm hearing. Now, I may know where A is every now and then, but I'm not at all absolute or perfect. I'm relative. Like if he plays a C, and I can match his C, but I'm not able to tell whether it's C sharp, C flat. I have to use a tuner.
Yeah.
There's some people that understand the importance of tuning, and they will always use a tuner.
So, but with your setup, as far as if you were playing through a B15, would you dial in the EQ? Would you sit there and be, mess around with it? Or would you
Everything flat.
Everything flat, okay.
That way I have no... you can sit there for an hour tweaking, and it's your ear.
Yeah.
The engineer wants to hear zero.
Right.
It wants to hear zero. Now, I say it that way because the more you can do with it if you have to change things. If you have bass on your amplifier and you're checking the bass and he's recording the bass with a mic and he has bass on it, in the mix, if it's too much bass, it's hard to take that bass out.
That's right.
Whereas if it's flat, you would add, take away, but flat is okay.
Yeah.
All these hybrid basses that they make, believe me, with all this glue and glue stuff on it, no matter. This is cheap wood, alder, cheap wood. You can take this, anybody can take this bass apart. But you go to some of the other basses, it's like fooling around with one of them cars that you got, which you need a mechanic, because you don't have you can't take it apart. There's too much to it, But this right here is the best thing to happen to recording. I don't like to say that too much because they have not been that kind to me.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying.
Wait, tell me why you like the P bass versus the jazz bass. We talked about it for a second.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a big hand.
Yep.
And that's for me.
Yeah.
Now, Jerry Jamont plays this bass.
Yeah.
And his hand's bigger than mine. Jocko played this bass. but their hand is much bigger than mine. I'm talking about bigger like that. But for some reason, my hand just got too fat, for playing chorus here.
Yeah.
Whereas this is the first bass that I got. And I'm used to it, it's a habit. And there's so much difference in space.
Oh, yeah. The string spacing is completely different. It's much
Also,
wider.
this has a tendency to be like the upright. It's skinny here, and it gets bigger as it goes down to the nut.
Yeah.
Whereas this is the same all the way down.
Right.
And so this became my habit. It is a very simple instrument, very cheap. And when I say that, I'm not trying to negate the instrument, but it's a cheap instrument. The wood is cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Plastic, not metal. Pickups are very, very, very... The magnetic pickups will always work better than electronic pickups. For some reason, I can't explain it. But I do know that when I listen to a record, I can bet the farm that I can tell you if it's one of these or another one.
Right.
Because of the way that they sound. It's got everything going on to it. Some basses, you just hear this part of the sound. Some basses this. Some basses... With that instrument, you get the total range of warmth from it, Plus, it's a habit. Now, I have not played... my bass is a 4. I've been playing a 5 for the last 15 years.
Okay.
But it wasn't this brand.
When did people start playing 5-string basses?
We can thank Anthony Jackson, and I think probably
Back in the 70s, right?
back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Another bass player, too, that played on the Tom Scott record, that played a 5-string bass. But I didn't start fooling around with one maybe 10 years ago.
Would you tune down ever, though, for things? Would you, if you wanted to grab lower notes or something, tune down?
Donny Hathaway had me tuned down on a couple of songs.
Okay.
Especially
Would you
if
just
he
turn
was,
the whole bass down or just tune the low E down?
Well, it depends on what the pattern is.
Yeah.
But he wrote a lot in the E flat.
Yeah.
And so in playing a low E flat is an open string if you tune this string down. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So now, because sometimes if you're there's all kinds of tricks. The song is in E flat. If you tune the bass, if the orchestrator wants that E flat to be a low ringing E flat,
Yeah.
then you sort of kind of tune the whole bass down a half step.
Right.
So now, but you tune it down, but he writes the chart in E. The chart is in E.
Right.
But you have tuned down a half step, so now you're in E flat with everybody else.
Right.
I think that's smart.
Yeah.
You've done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
I always did like the 5-string bass, but you see, that's something that comes with, you don't just adopt it. Because if you're playing a 4-string bass, and now you got a 5-string bass, everything is a fourth off, which means you can make a lot of mistakes because you think you're fingering C, but you're fingering G.
Right.
Because of the habit of your hand.
Yeah.
So it takes a while. The only thing that will help you really want to play that 5 is the sound of that low.
Of getting that low B.
Of the low B.
And getting the low C's and D's.
And
things
so the
like
low
that.
B and the low C.
Yeah, those are good.
And you hear it, boy, and I tell you, it's like, whoa.
Did you ever wish that you had those on recordings back, in the...
Actually, no.
Okay.
Because there's no way for me to really reflect that way other than I've always been a 4-string player. I probably would have used it. Number one, a lot of bass players use it too much. Concert-wise, there is no low B.
Right.
Sometimes the music doesn't really need it unless although it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I remember doing a gig with Chuck Berry, and he did a lot of songs in C. And one song ended in C, and I played that low.
Would you tune down for the last note?
I actually, at that time, I was playing a 5-string bass or a 6-string bass. And the song ended in C, and I played a low C.
Yeah.
And he is not the nicest person in the world. And he turned around and looked at me and he said, I like that note.
Wow.
He had never heard it. The low C is hard to hear.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear.
That's cool.
And when you hear it, the first thing you do is, it just has that. But the low B, woo! That low B, especially if it's in tune.
Oh, so good.
It'll change your life. That's a musician talking.
I want to talk to you about some of your influences. Okay, some of your jazz. You're into Mingus. You're into who are your bass players that you liked?
Well, I primarily have been into. Good question, because sometimes I get confused. I came up listening to the organ bass players
Okay.
in jazz and in the gospel music,
Yep.
and then after that, then I did get an electric bass. But the upright players have been sort of my influence to play bass, because I've always not always been an R&B bass player
Yeah.
or a country bass player, which I do those things very well. But I always listen to the modern jazz quartet, the Three Sounds, people like Mingus, people like
Paul Chambers,
Slam Stewart,
Slam Stewart, Paul Chambers.
Paul Chambers. Now, for some reason, Paul Chambers kind of escaped me. Ed Blanchard, Mingus,
Yep.
Ray Brown, George Vivier, Milt Hinton.
Yep.
Those were always Richard Davis,
Yep.
Bob Crenshaw. Those were the people that I was basically social with. And they did not play the electric bass, but we were friends.
Right. What did they think of the electric bass? Those guys.
They thought it was
Cool.
like Milt Hinton, George Vivier were real cool.
Yeah.
I mean, real cool about wanting to play it, although they didn't.
Right.
Bob Crenshaw played both basses successfully.
Okay. Did Mingus like the electric bass?
He played mine once.
Okay. Wow.
And he said, first time I ever played one of these, and he gave it back. But the upright players have been more or less the bass players that I have sort of kind of talk about. You listen to the modern jazz quartet or the Three Sounds, and you hear that upright. Oh man, just what can I say? You know, it just makes you feel so. I wish I could do that. And you can on the electric bass if you have an E-bow. You know what an E-bow is?
Of course I do.
And every now and then I use an E-bow. So when I play, especially on the low string,
Yeah.
boom.
I've never used an E-bow. I've had E-bows sitting here forever. I've never used an E-bow on a bass. Never even
It
thought
makes
about
it
doing
growl.
it. Wow.
And you also have to have experience on how to use it because it can be too much or not enough.
Okay.
You know. So
Wait, what gave you the idea to do that? I don't know why I've never even thought of that. It seems so logical.
A guitar player.
Okay, and you just thought, oh, that sounds great.
Especially
right?
if you want to make it whine a little bit like an upright.
Yeah.
Now, there a lot of electric bass players I've been attracted to. But to answer your question, coming up has been the organ bass and the upright. Between me and you and the gatepost, I don't want to be bothered with an organ. I don't want to be bothered with an upright bass. Number one, when they break, you got a problem.
Oh, yeah.
And it's expensive.
Yep.
And you have to really be, not to say that I'm loosey-goosey.
Well, organs especially.
Organ, yeah. Well, I tell you, you put a hole into that upright bass, or you mess around and break the bridge, it gets to be expensive. And when you have it with you and you're in public, you have to really...
You got to be careful with
You
it.
got to really be Ganesh with it.
That's right.
You have to really be careful with it because it's an acoustic instrument. And if you got a crack in it or if you got a hole in it, it's not going to... All the guys that play on Broadway in those pits have basses that cost $90,000, $100,000.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bass, a violin. But so do the violin players. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
And they don't carry them. The cartridge country carries them to the theater and back to wherever they're stored. When it comes to electric bass, the only bass player that I can think of at the very beginning is James Jamerson, because I had to play those songs in order to pay my rent and to keep playing. You got to know these songs.
Yeah. Did you know him at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did know Jamerson. We weren't close friends,
Yeah.
but we did know each other and we did get along well.
Okay.
The only other bass player that I can think of that has intrigued me was, I would say, Anthony Jackson. And that Anthony, I'm not that kind of bass player.
Right.
And when I say that, I mean that he plays not, when you say jazz, when I say jazz, it's a walking pattern. But Chick Corea was in a special place. And I listened to Anthony Jackson play with Chick Corea. This is before he was a studio musician playing, like Money, Money, Money is one of his things, But in listening to him with Chick Corea, I really listened to Anthony because I would not be able to do those gigs. I'm a different bass player.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I don't read that well. And some of the stuff that he is playing, he read. And I'm not that kind of reader. I would have to practice it, learn it. I don't sight read stuff like that.
But you were a good reader when you're playing your trumpet, so when you're doing that, right?
Well, I'm a good reader now as a bass player. It's just that if Chick Corea writes a bass part,
that's very different than when you read on a chart.
Yeah,
right?
but I
regular session.
Definitely, I bring back so many memories. I was in Etta James' band for a year. After being on the road, she got contracted to do the theaters. They call them the Chitlin Circuit theaters.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the first one was the Apollo. When we were at rehearsal, band rehearsal for her stint, for her weekly appearance at the Apollo, I sat down in the chair, full, and the conductor put a book on my stand, my music stand, that said bass guitar. I said, okay, open it up. The first song was At Last. No chords, all notation.
Okay.
Now, we've been playing At Last on the gig.
Right.
So no problem. I don't have to read. I was not reading in the bass clef.
Right.
So, and I played A, but as I got to the introduction, the notes were changing and it was orchestrated. And so after about maybe a minute and a half, everybody knew that I couldn't read because I was not playing the part. So I got fired, which was embarrassing. But I was in New York, and I've been playing in New York, and I was a New Yorker at that time.
Okay.
And so the band members in the orchestra, in the Apollo Orchestra, knew that I could play.
Yeah.
Because they had heard me play with Curtis, they had heard me, well, not with Curtis, but they knew I was a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Trumpet player, Monty Johnson, said, Chuck, that note's going to always be A. So get that in your mind, it's going to always be A. And he helped me learn how to read by sending me downtown to Manny's Music and getting a music book. And to learn how, it was a book by Trigger Albert called Trigger Happy.
Okay.
And it's a book of melodies, just melody. He says, you got a good ear. He says, go through this book, you know where A is. He said, you go through this book, and when you hear something wrong, it's the wrong note. Because I did have a good ear. But it's a book of melodies. He says, oh, the one note could be a sharp or a flat, but you're close in reading the note. So that's how I learned how to read the bass clef. Because I could read the treble clef, no problem at all. I've been through that all my life. The viola, I don't remember what clef the viola is in. But it was definitely an experience. I'm enjoying talking to you. Brings back a lot of memories. I met so many people that are not here anymore.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. Because at a moment when you're alone, you start thinking about the trials and tribulations you've had, along with the love and the respect for certain people. They're not here anymore.
A lot of
almost like your mother and father. When your mama and pop leave here.
Yep.
It takes a while. You forget it for a minute, but every now and then, you wake up hurt. But it is what it is. That's what life is all about. I've enjoyed my career to the max. I've enjoyed it. I've had a lot of occasions where I felt so proud. I wish that my mother and my father and my sister were alive to really see how it is, especially when I got my honorary degree from Berkeley.
Berkeley, yeah.
And I'm getting one in this April from Lane College. Two institutions entirely different. One is huge, the other one is very small. But still, it makes me feel so good that a group of people got together and concurred the same thing. At Berkeley, at least 30 people sat down and gave me this degree. At Lane, probably another 15 just sat down to agree. Makes me feel so proud for my family. Like my kids had no idea what I did. None whatsoever, until they got grown.
Right.
When they got grown, then they began to see what I've been doing, And I'm kind of glad about that because this is not easy.
Right.
It's not an easy profession.
Right.
Trials and tribulations go along with everything that you do. So you can make money, you can have fame, you can have all that. But along with that came trials and tribulations, divorces, all kinds of problems.
Right.
Your children go different directions, and it hurts, you know. However, although it hurts, you keep pressing on with a smile because you're waking up in pain. You know, so that right there, I've been very, very fortunate to have a mindset to enjoy my career, and to have someone like you call me up and want to talk to me.
Chuck, I've wanted to talk to you for forever. I'm so glad that we worked this out, and it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, you made it so easy.
It's really so fascinating to hear you talk about these things, and especially you have such a good sense of humor about it too.
You got to. If you don't laugh, I love to laugh. If you don't laugh, you know, the longer you laugh, the longer you live, I think. And I'm in my space where I'm living a long time.
You're gonna be 83 this year, right?
Huh?
You'll be 83 this year?
Yeah. Yep.
Did you ever think you'd live to 83, Chuck?
Never thought about it.
Chuck, it's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing.
Well, I enjoyed the trip. Thank you for bringing me to Atlanta. It's my pleasure. It's nice to meet you.
You too. Thank
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it.